Hello. Hi. So last month, the first book I read was The Teacher by Freida McFadden. And remember, I was punishing myself by reading 5 books because I read 3 books in January and I had plans to read 4 books per month, which never happened. And then I ended up reading 4 books in Feb. And you know what? I'm no longer punishing myself because that's one more book. That's an improvement. I'm taking the growth that came and I'm proud of it. So yeah, 4 books, good. I just hope whatever, I'm going with the flow. So the first book I read was The Teacher by Freida McFadden, which is the first book by Freida that I've read this year. And also, yeah, if you love plot twists, I'll just tell you to read this book. So this book is a psychological thriller and it explores a subject that it's hardly talked about in society. Hardly, actually, hardly. And something stood out for me in that book. But before I get there, I have to say it's a book about it has students, teenagers, and it has teachers. It has a web of deception and control. Some of the themes, there is a cycle of abuse when victims do not recognize they're actually victims. There's a character that shows that in the end that it just ends without them knowing they're actually being groomed or manipulated in this book, taking advantage of young people and double standards in society. That one stood out for me, and I'll explain to you why. I feel like I should leave you to think about this. Yeah, so in the book, I after finishing reading, I went into the character Adi, and I was like, you know what? I feel like Adi she had looking at her background, she has a difficult relationship with her parents, especially her dad, and so maybe there's a void in her which she filled with the love or the support she received from her teachers, beginning with the first teacher who is art and then goes to Nate who supports her. They have something in common, which is poetry. They both love poetry. And how Nate is now that brings me to the character Nate, how he's portrayed in the book. He comes off as charming. He's everyone's favorite teacher. He dresses well. He looks good. Um, like he's just it's so easy to miss them. I feel like we miss these kind of people. They come off as charming, but they're just good at reading people and manipulating people. And yeah, we miss that a lot. And being a school, because this is a setting, it's a school setting, so we trust our kids with teachers, but sometimes they might not always want to help. So that is what is in this book. um Before I get to my point, as I get to my point, yes. So it got me to Nate, and then I was like, you know what? Because when I kept on reading and found out how it started with his wife, I was like, you know what? This guy is just naturally a groomer, a manipulator, a predator. He's all bad things, and he hides it so well. So knowing very well, even when you see like his wife was like, you know what, we're gonna leave this town, you're not going to teach again. And for you to know there is something that is wrong with someone is the fact that Eve's parents did not like this guy from the word go, but she went on. And when you come to learn of how Eve and Nate met, you're kind of sad, but at the same time, as you read on, you get to discover more. I'll try my best not to spoil, and at the same time, get to my message. Yeah, um, Eve, yeah, the way he met with his wife and made me realize for him it's natural. He's not like a good person at all for me. I made that conclusion like from the word go, he's not a good guy. So why? Because it's a cycle for him. It's not his first time. I'm pretty sure it wouldn't have been the last time he did such a thing, because for such people like him, they they prey on youthfulness, vulnerability, and how easy it is to manipulate and control these kind of people. Because you see how he met Adi and Eve and Kenzie. It was like they were in their vulnerable situations, and he was there. He loved them, and when you're vulnerable, you'll actually mistake something for being genuine when it's not genuine. So there's that. And so he preyed on that. He did what he did. He used them. But maybe the reason why he got married to Eve was because at some point such people seek, they don't genuinely love someone. they seek they see you as a possession, something that gives them power. So for some time, I feel like Eve was something that gave him power, like a possession, like he had power over it. It was a perfect toy for him to play with, hence why he ended up married him. But we can already tell their marriage is not perfect, they're not happy, and maybe they still stick with each other because they have this thing in common. Maybe the foundation of their marriage, unhappy marriage, and the reason why they're still together is because they share this thing in common. That brings me to the cycle of abuse. We may start with Eve. You see the way Eve. I feel like Eve Eve just represents like the bloodlines between innocence and manipulation. Like she had a choice to be different, but she went on carrying the cycle of from being a victim to being a manipulator herself. And that brings me actually to my point. That is my point, something to think about, which is her relationship. Let me not spoil that, but let me go to this. If she had regrets, they clearly didn't stop her from seeking out a similar dynamic with someone younger. That makes her character even more complex, as she wasn't just someone manipulated by Nate. She also became a manipulator in her own way. And in the book, the way they describe that relationship, maybe right now this guy is like her perfect possession, her perfect pawn, a perfect toy to play with, and maybe later she might get bored, which brings the cycle of how Nate was with her for a while and then seeking other people, still sticking together, her making the decision of being like her becoming the manipulator. Maybe the open-endedness of the book just gives you something to think about, in the end. And when it comes to predatory women, predatory when it comes to predatory women in society, there is often a stack between in how they are perceived compared to male predators. Society tends to be more forgiving or even dismissive of female predators, especially if their victims are male. Many times their actions are framed as seduction rather than abuse. The young male victims are sometimes even praised or seen lucky rather than recognized as exploited. There is also a tendency to assume that women are naturally more nurturing, which makes it harder for people to accept that some women can, some women can just be as manipulative as men, manipulative and predatory as men. In case in cases where female predators are exposed, they often receive more lenient punishments and less social condemnation than their male counterparts. Yeah. So there is that thing to think about, because it's like, Eve, you know. I also think now this gives us an opportunity to like learn more about the signs that we should watch out for and also how to support victims. I'm done. Man.